Hi everyone, welcome back. Today, this video, I'm going to do another update on how I'm getting on with this year's reading rush, and this is my third update. So the first and the most exciting thing that I want to talk about is that I received my reading journal. This is the official Reading Rush reading journal, and I ordered this probably about a month ago, and so I was really hoping that it would arrive in time for this year's event. And thankfully it came on Friday, so obviously a little bit late but just in time. So I'm really looking forward to filling this one out and updating my progress on here. Obviously I'll have to backfill it a little bit, but yeah, it's really fun, and I'm really glad I decided to go with the printed version rather than the PDF that you can print yourself. It's got space in here to journal about how you've been getting on each day and what you've read, keep track of the number of pages that you've read each day, as well as like your progress in any of the reading sprints. And it also has space at the back to write about book reviews of some of the books that you read. But it's just really nice to have the actual hard copy rather than me trying to print it out myself. It's got a really nice cardboard glossy cover, and yeah, it's really nice quality paper as well. So I'm really excited to have that. And this is like A5 size, you can't really tell, but yeah, it's really nice. I'm so excited. I have also ordered some other merchandise from them. So I ordered a mug and the coin. And there's even, very exciting, space in the back page to stick in your coin if you want to. So I think it's really nice. So yeah, it's super exciting, and I'm really glad that it arrived just in time for the event, because I'm looking forward to keeping this as like a nice little memento of the fact that I took part. So next is to talk about the books I've been reading. So my last video I did was on Thursday. So I've read a few books since then. I've read 2 books since then. So I finished reading The Court of Miracles. This was the book that I chose for the prompt to read a book that matches the colour of your birthstone. My birthday is in December, so I chose this one as it's got, as it's the blue colour. So I really enjoyed this one. I've rated it 4 stars. So The Court of Miracles is basically the criminal underworld in Paris. The main character is Nina, who joins the Guild of Thieves, which is to protect herself from her father, as her father has just sold her sister into the Guild of the Flesh, which is essentially slaves and prostitutes. And once you're part of a guild in the Court of Miracles, then it's illegal for anyone else in the court to attack you or injure you. And if they do, then there's serious consequences. So she then becomes, rises through the ranks as a cat burglar, stealing jewels and, valuable items at night. And it follows her story as she then tries to save her sister from, this sort of life of prostitution. And it turns out all the women who are part of the Guild of Flesh are drugged. And along the way, she's got a group of friends that she makes. It has several heists along the way, which I really love reading. And obviously there's always sort of things that go wrong during the heist, and she has to come up with really quick solutions to fix it. So afterwards, after I finished reading The Court of Miracles, I had a look at some of the reviews, and they said that a lot of people said that the characters are in this, and I didn't realise that. But I think it was interesting to me when I read the reviews that people who have read Les Miserables didn't like the way that she's used those characters and the changes that she's done to their characters. Whereas people like me who haven't yet managed to read this, or haven't watched the musical, haven't watched the adaptation on TV or film, have said that actually they really enjoyed it. I felt like some of the characters could have been a bit more well-rounded. For example, Nina has nothing at all goes wrong for her, and she has lots of characters. Lots of the male characters are all in love with her, and I can kind of see why, because she is a real badass and she's really awesome, she's really smart. But I also feel like it's not necessarily realistic that she seems to have no flaws whatsoever. And also a lot of the characters, they just don't have any other personality traits. Like there's one character who's the drunk one, there's one who's the revolutionary one. And I just think that they they came across sometimes as caricatures rather than real characters. But as I say, I still enjoyed it, and I gave this one 4 stars, which I'd say is a pretty solid rating. So the second book that I read yesterday was The Beholder, which is by Anna Bright. And this was the book I was going to read for the prompt of a book with a title that begins with the word the. So I've had this on my shelf for a little while. I originally bought this basically because of this absolutely gorgeous front cover, which has obviously has the ship on the front, which is the ship called the Beholder. And this is set in kind of like an alternate universe of the, alternate Earth. And that I found that at times a little bit confusing, and I think this would have worked a bit better if there was a map in the front of the book, which there isn't. And the main character is called Sela, and she is from a world called Pontomac. And I think it's supposed to be, from what it says in the story, it talks about it being part of the New World, and that they have Arbor Day. So they have Arbor Day, and they talk about how they're now independent from England and the English Empire. And so that kind of also makes me think that this probably starts off in a fictional America. So maybe this would also work for the different continent prompt as well. But it's obviously a slightly different history, as it says about how the English Empire has completely failed and a new one has taken over. She also goes to visit England at the very start of the book. She stays in Winchester and visits a prince who lives in Winchester Castle. And in the second part of the story, she goes to visit another man who lives in Norge, which is in a place called Asgard. So, and he also has like a giant one-handed hammer, for example. I thought at some parts, it was you could kind of guess where these people were from and where she was visiting. So the story starts with Sela, and she is I'm really hoping I'm pronouncing this right, because I'm not sure. So I've never heard this word pronounced out loud. I don't know if you've ever had that before, where you know what the word means, but you've never heard it pronounced. So Sela is the seneschal, something like that, of Pontomac. So she's the seneschal elect. So she's like almost like a princess. And she has an evil stepmother, of course, who she believes hates her and is trying to get rid of her. But as part of her duties, she has to, obviously she needs to get married and produce heirs. At the start of the story, her father has arranged for her to marry Peter, who's a nobleman in the town she lives in, and he's well respected, he's very kind, he's very loving, and she's been in love with him basically since forever. And so when her father arranges a marriage between the two, she's super excited. But to announce the proposal, they have, they'll just do it obviously in public, and her father says to Peter's family, will you take Sela's hand in marriage? And unfortunately, the father says, no, he won't. So she's absolutely heartbroken. She hadn't realised that she would be rejected, obviously, and she feels absolutely humiliated. But straight away, as soon as the whole event is over, she's dragged into a meeting with some of the advisors, and they basically say that the only choice that she has now, after her awful humiliation, is the fact that because there's no way she can find another romantic partner who lives in the town. And obviously at the time she's still heartbroken, so as far as she's concerned, Peter is still the only one for her, and she's still, understandably, I think, reeling from the sort of the shock and the horror of what's just happened, of this public rejection in front of everybody she knows and loves. So they say, well, the only choice is for you to sail across the Atlantic and meet these suitors. And her stepmother, who's currently 5 months pregnant, produces a folder and says, I've even arranged all these meetings already for you. I've bought you a ship. I've got you a captain and a crew. Off you go. And that happens in sort of the first couple of chapters. So that's obviously a really shocking start. And, she's sort of and I really felt for her as she's really thrown into this awful situation. So I really liked in the story that they had those sort of allusions and references to other myths and legends. And even though you don't always know what country they're referencing, you can guess from the stories that they tell. So there are a lot of allusions to fairy stories, for example, and I quite liked that every sort of few chapters there's also a page that has a retelling of like a myth or a story, which then is kind of referenced to sometimes. Let me just see if I can find a page. So like every few pages there's like this which has the original translation and, you know, the original text in the original language, and then it has the translated version, and it's all different myths and stories. So this one is from Cinderella, and I sort of quite liked that it does have that fairy tale feel to it. In that way I thought it was a bit like Girl's Serpent Thorn by Melissa Bashadoost that I read recently, which again takes inspiration from fairy stories and myths. And throughout the story, Seela does read, she's got a giant book of fairy stories, and she reads that to comfort herself. So she does acknowledge that there's a lot of influence of fairy stories in her life. I think the main, so far, because I've now also just started reading The Boundless, which is the sequel to this book. It's a duology, so there's only the two. And this one also has an absolutely beautiful front cover. So I think the main issues that I had with this book was that a lot of the characters, again, similar to The Court of Miracles, don't always seem very well rounded and very well thought out. So Seela herself seems to be, at times, she's quite naive, and she really does fall for men very quickly. She does seem incredibly naive and very trusting of people. I think I would have liked to have seen as well a little bit more interaction between Seela and the crew. There's, I think, 14 or so members of the crew on the ship with her, as well as an advisor who's there to sort of help guide her. And she does refer to one of the characters on the crew as like a brother to her, but obviously she herself doesn't seem to have ever really spoken to this guy. So although they do have, they have spent quite a lot of time together on the ship, so you would think that, if you spend close quarters with this, 15 other people for like a month or two, then you will form close bonds. But I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that. As I said, I have started the sequel to this one, The Boundless. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this one goes and what the conclusion to the story will be. I do really love that it has allusions to myths and fairy stories, and I really like that element to it. And it also seems to have, again, a little bit of revolutionary feel like The Court of Miracles does, which again, I always really love. I always really love in stories stuff about rebellion and, defying authorities and stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to the conclusion of The Boundless and finding out what happens to all the characters. So that's my update for today for the Reading Rush. I will film another video later on today when I finish The Boundless to update you all on what I thought and how it compared to The Beholder. So yes, that's all I have for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.